everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Today we're going to be talking about the books I read in August. So I mentioned this in some past videos, but the past couple months have been very reading slumpy for me. I was doing really well up until like June, where I had the motivation to read, I really wanted to read, and I was reading quite a few books every single month. And then I got pregnant, and we moved, and we did a ton of work on this house. So reading just was not something that was that appealing to me. I was just really tired, and there's a lot of change, a lot of things going on. I've been kind of in a reading slump, but I think I'm starting to get out of it. Hallelujah, because I love reading so much, so I hate it when I'm in a reading slump because I'm like, I know I love reading, I know I want to read, but I don't want to read right now. But I read 4 books in the month of August, so let's talk about them. The first book that I read was a little novella called And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. I gave this book 5 stars. It's so sweet and so heartbreaking, which is kind of like how I feel about every Fredrik Backman, but I also love all of them that I've read so far. Basically, in this book, you're following a grandpa who is suffering from memory loss, and you're kind of seeing him give a tour of his brain to his grandson, and looking back on his life and his memories and trying to remember things. And then it also cuts in and out of conversations that are happening in the moment where people are trying to explain to him where he is, what he's been doing, who they are, and their family members, and he just doesn't remember. And I thought that this was such a heartbreaking and insightful look into what it might be like for a person who is suffering from memory loss, whether that be like Alzheimer's or dementia or amnesia, something like that, you know. I really liked seeing that perspective of it, especially because both of my grandmothers on both my father and mother's side are suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, that kind of memory loss, and it's really heartbreaking to see them struggle with it and to think that, you know, maybe they won't remember me, even though so much of my childhood was spent with them, and just how formative they were for me as grandmothers, you know. And so that's just like a heartbreaking thought, to think that they might not remember me. But I really enjoyed this book. I read it really quickly because it's pretty short, and it did make me cry. And if I think about it too much, I think I might cry again. Probably not just because I'm pregnant, because this is a subject that is near to my heart. But also pregnancy hormones don't help with that. Just, it's a really beautiful book, and if you know someone who is suffering from memory loss, I would recommend reading it because I think it just offers a unique perspective. And I also love the way that Fredrik Backman writes. I think he's an amazing author. So that's the first book I read. The next book I read was Thornhedge by Kingfisher. I discovered Kingfisher this year, and I've loved every single book that she has written. I really enjoy this one. I think I gave it a 4-star or 5-star. I guess I'm looking at my Goodreads and I gave it a 5-star. It might be closer to like a 4.75, but we'll round up. This is a kind of dark retelling of Sleeping Beauty, where the Sleeping Beauty is asleep for a reason and should not be awoken. And I just found it so interesting. This is another pretty short one. I don't know if it counts as a novel or a novella. I'm not really sure. But it's pretty short, and you're following kind of the fairy who is in charge of making sure that she stays asleep and learning why, and I just really liked it. I thought it was such a unique perspective. It's really well written, really interesting, and I blew through this one. I read it really quickly, and definitely helped me kind of get out of the reading slump, which prepared me for the much longer book that I read next, which was The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland. I gave this one a 4-star. I actually read it because I saw Kayla from Books and Lala mention it. I love her. I love her channel, and she's so creative and she's so funny, and just like, I'm a big fan. But most of the time she reads books that are way scarier than what I can handle. And so I'm always like, she makes every book sound so interesting that I'm like, oh, I want to read that. And there's been a few that I've tried to read and then I'm like, oh, hold on, wait a second, I'm a baby, I can't read this. But this was one that was not too scary for me, so I'm glad that I picked it up and read it from her recommendation. This is following a woman and you have some dual timelines here, who is a vampire. It's a vampire story. So you're kind of following her childhood and growing up of becoming a vampire and going through time knowing that she can't die and things that happen, and you're going through history, and then the present day timeline, which is in 1984, and she teaches a art school, French art preschool is what it is. And there's a student that she really connects with that she worries might be suffering from a domestic violence situation. She kind of inserts herself and tries to help him. I found this book really interesting. I really enjoy vampire stories. I like gothic horror a lot because it's not as scary to me, which is why I like it, I think. It's because I feel like I can handle it a little bit better than like a slasher. And so I really enjoy that it kind of has that gothic atmosphere. Dracula's one of my favorite books. So like, you know, I love me a good like gothic vampire story, and I liked how unique this one was, and the different conversations around vampirism, living forever, if living forever is a good thing, if that's something that you want, if it's something that you need to like have permission from someone before giving them that gift of living forever. And then of course the conversations around domestic abuse and when you should do something as a bystander, and if you aren't sure of the situation, what should you do, because you don't want to put that person in more harm, and then you also don't want to accuse someone of something if they're not doing it. I just thought those conversations were all really interesting. I've seen a lot of people compare it to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which is actually a book that I DNF'd because I was like, how could this woman be alive for this long and be so boring and so two-dimensional? And that's why I DNF'd it. And this book was like that, but better. And she was not a two-dimensional character, and it showed her living through real events and living through history and the things she learned from it. And so that's why I liked it so much more, because I'm like, if someone has been alive for that long and been through that much history, and we're talking world wars and, you know, different political movements, all these things, the Industrial Revolution, if you're alive through all of that, you better have a pretty cool personality. Like, you better have learned something from it. So that's why I didn't like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And I will say, if you love that book, I'm not trying to hate on you or say that you're wrong or anything. If you love it, I'm so glad it works for you. But for me, I just did not connect. So this book was like a redemption for that, because I didn't like that book. But I loved this one. So yeah, that's The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland. The last book that I read was The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This book is so ridiculous. So I gave this 2 stars, but I will say that this book did what it set out to do. It just wasn't for me. So I want you to take what I say with a grain of salt, because it could work really well for a lot of people, and I think it has. I mean, it has a 3.79 on Goodreads, which is like an okay rating, I think. Pretty high. Medium? I don't know. Do I know anything? Maybe not. Basically, this book, you're following a woman who gave a book a 1-star review, and then the author is like coming to murder her over it. The majority of this book is like very high action. The author that wants to stalk her and kill her, breaking in, trying to kill her, running around, having a fight. Like, it is very action heavy, very violent. And that, I think, is what wasn't for me, because I don't really love reading like graphic violence at all. And it wasn't super, super graphic. But there were a few moments that I was like, ooh, whoa. And also I was like, for me too, I got a little bored, because I was like, this is too much just action, 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 action without a lot happening. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? The twist at the end I did see coming, which is surprising for me, because usually I don't. Like, and people will say like, oh yeah, that was a super easy to see twist, and I'm like, it was? I didn't pick up on it. But this time I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think my 2-star review was mostly just because it wasn't for me, but I will say this book was very satirical, and I think it was done well. And I think that you have to know that it's a satire for you to see it as it being done well, because otherwise you can be like, this book is just stupid. but I think it is ridiculous, but I think it's a type of ridiculous that a lot of people really enjoy. So there's that. So yeah, those were the 4 books that I read. I am feeling a lot better about reading this month already, and I think I'm going to get back into the swing of things now that we're starting to settle in a little bit more to our house, and I'm getting into the 2nd trimester of my pregnancy, so things aren't as horrible. Not that things have been really horrible, but things are easier when you get into the 2nd trimester, for sure. And so I think that will give me the energy that I need to want to read and have motivation. So yeah, tell me if you've read these books, because I'm very curious, and what you thought about them. Tell me how your reading month went. Was it good? Was it bad? What was your favorite book? What was your least favorite book? I would love to know. I would love to have some book recommendations. I hope you enjoyed talking about books with me. I really love talking about books, and hopefully, I'm hoping that me getting out of this reading slump means that there will be more reading content coming soon, because I enjoy making it. But I just needed a break from that for a minute, I think, to get back into the swings of loving reading. So, which happens. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!